Okay. We are streaming live on YouTube. My name is Judge Tamika West, and I'm presiding over the preliminary hearing calendar for today. I'm officially calling the state of Georgia versus Kashif Brooks with respect to several charges. The first charge would be warrant number 2021 CW 55497 for the charge of kidnapping. Warrant number 2021 CW 55498. Charge of aggravated assault. Charge number 2021 CW 55499 for the charge of possession of a firearm with respect to Mr. Brooks. And then the last charge is charge number 2021 CW 55500 for terroristic threats. The state is represented by ADA Cheryl Freeman, and the defendant will be represented by Attorney Rogers. Are you ready to proceed, Ms. Freeman?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you, Officer Satcher. You can turn your video on and unmute yourself. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to provide in the matter of state of Georgia versus Kashif Brooks will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, to help you God?
I do.
Please tell us, you can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
Officer Satcher with Clayton County Police Department.
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
Over a year.
Were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on November 9th of 2021?
Yes.
And 1 second. On that particular day, did you respond to 1575 Tigress Court in College Park, Georgia?
Yes.
Is that in Clayton County?
It is.
When you arrived there, did you go to that address? And I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear, 1575 or is it 1757?
I went to 1757 Tigress Court.
Okay, I apologize. And is that a home or an apartment or a business?
It's a townhome.
When you got to that address, who did you speak to?
I spoke with my victim, Tyra Wynn.
Give me a second.
Was Ms. Wynn outside of the residence or was she inside?
She was inside the residence. Upon my arrival, she did come outside.
What did Ms. Tyra Wynn tell you that happened?
On November 9th, I met with Ms. Wynn at the 1757 Tigress Court location. She informed me that her and the suspect had an agreement for him to come to the residence to visit their juvenile child. Ms. Wynn told me that the suspect asked her to take the child with him to visit his mother, the child's grandmother. She told him no, that the child has to remain in her custody. The victim told me that the suspect approached the residence, took the child by the arm, placed the child in the back seat of the vehicle he was operating, and that the suspect approached her again, assaulted her by removing a handgun from his person, raising it, pointing the handgun in her face, and the suspect made the threat that I'm going to kill you, bitch. The victim then ran inside of the residence and called law enforcement.
Officer Satcher, when you say the suspect, are you referring to Kashif Brooks?
That's correct.
Did Ms. Tyra Wynn provide you Mr. Brooks's name or any identifying information?
I asked Ms. Wynn for the suspect's identifying information. She provided me the suspect's name and date of birth, I believe, and gave me a physical description of him, but she was not able to provide me like his contact number or home address.
How old was the child that Mr. Brooks took?
1 second. He was 3 at the time.
Was Ms. Tyra Wynn the custodial parent of the child?
That's correct. I asked Ms. Tyra Wynn, was she the custodial parent, and if Mr. Brooks had the child legitimized. She informed me that the child was not legitimized through the state of Georgia, and she is the custodial parent.
Was Ms. Nguyen able to provide a description of the handgun that Mr. Brooks pulled out and pointed at her?
At that point, to my recollection, she just said it was a black pistol.
Was Mr. Brooks on the scene when you arrived?
No, he was not.
Was Ms. Nguyen able to give you any address, any location where she thought he might be?
Ms. Nguyen told me that she believes that Mr. Brooks was at his mom's residence, being that, to her knowledge, that's where he lived. She was not able to give me the physical address. She only told me that she knew how to get there. And she didn't recall if it was in the county or out of the county. She just told me that she knew how to get there. She believed that Mr. Brooks took the child to the mom, well, to his mom, the grandmother.
Were you able to speak to Mr. Brooks's mother?
I did. She refused to provide me her information as far as her name. I got her phone number from Mrs. Nguyen, the victim. I did contact the mother. I asked her, has she heard from Mr. Brooks today? She told me no. I informed her why I was calling her. She said that she hasn't seen the child that day, and that she isn't going to get in between whatever Mr. Brooks and Mrs. Nguyen have going on, and she disconnected the phone call.
Were you able to speak to any other witnesses who may have seen or heard anything regarding this incident?
None of the witnesses saw Mr. Brooks take the child from Ms. Nguyen's custody. They just stated that they saw Mrs. Nguyen go back inside the residence in a frantic manner, scared, and called 911.
Ms. Nguyen was the person who called 911?
Yes, Mrs. Nguyen was the victim, was the one who called 911.
At some point, Officer Satcher, were you able to speak to the defendant, Kashif Brooks?
I was not. I attempted to, well, later during my investigation, after speaking with the victim and obtaining all the information I needed for my investigation, the victim received a phone call from the suspect. Early in my investigation, she said that she had numbers blocked, so she wasn't sure which number belonged to him, but she did receive a phone call while I was still on scene. And the suspect telling the victim that he's going to return to the scene and finish what he started as far as relating to the threats that he made towards her. I attempted to call the phone number that the suspect called the victim on several times. I did not get an answer. I also had my sergeant and other officers try to reach out as well, at least try to, locate the child and Mr. Brooks. Nobody was able to get in contact with them. And we did wait on the scene for a good bit of time. I say roughly an hour plus to see if Mr. Brooks would come back with the child.
Did he come back with the child while you were still on the scene?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Are you aware of whether or not Mr. Brooks eventually brought the child back to Ms. Nguyen?
Throughout my follow-up investigation, the next day, I didn't receive any notice that the child was brought back to the mom.
Written statement regarding what happened? Frozen? Let's see, I think, was that frozen, Judge?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Officer Satcher, did Ms. Nguyen provide a written statement about what happened?
Yes, she did provide a written statement, as well as detailing, the events that happened that day, and all the information pertaining to the juvenile.
Did you have on your body cam while Ms. Nguyen was making her statements?
I did.
All of this happened in Clayton County?
That's correct, ma'am.
Did Ms. Wynn indicate whether or not there were other people who heard Mr. Brooks make the statement, "I'm going to kill you"?
No, not to my recollection.
Did you speak to any witnesses that heard Mr. Brooks make the threat?
Did I speak to any witnesses?
Yes. That heard him make that threat.
There were no witnesses that heard him make the threat.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Attorney Rogers, your witness.
Thank you. Officer Satcher, you the lead officer on this case,
Yes.
and there's been some discussion of witnesses and what they did or did not say. How many witnesses are we talking about?
I didn't speak to any witnesses that heard or saw the altercation.
And to your understanding, where is the altercation supposed to have taken place?
The altercation took place in front of 1757 Tigers Court.
When we say in front, you mean outside?
Yes, outside, in a driveway, in a roadway.
And as far as the witnesses that we've been talking about, who are these people, I guess, that you at least checked with or whatever? Who are these people? Like, where are they? Why are they on the scene?
I didn't speak to any witnesses. The only witness was the homeowner of 1757. Like I stated before, she saw Ms. Wynn go inside and very upset and call the police. No one else heard or saw the altercation.
Okay. And as far as any kind of video or anything like that, are you aware of any sort of video of the incident?
No, there's no video.
And as it stands, was a firearm or anything like that ever recovered in connection with this alleged incident?
No, not during my investigation.
And so when you spoke to Ms. Wynn after the allegations were made, correct me if I'm wrong, you said she did not provide you with any sort of contact information for Mr. Brooks, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did she explain to you how the two of them would have arranged a meeting or anything like that without her having contact info?
She mainly said social media through Instagram. Mr. Brooks, like I said, while I was on scene during the investigation, he called her from a different number. And so whatever number he would call her on, she would answer.
When you say call from a different number, a number different than what?
Well, Ms. Wynn told me that she had his primary cell phone number blocked, and that they would communicate through Instagram. And so he would reach out to her on a different number. She didn't have his original number saved and it was blocked.
Okay. Well, can you say that last part again? You said what about was saved and it was blocked?
She said the phone number that she originally had for him was blocked.
Okay. Did you say it was saved though?
It was not. It was blocked. So I asked her to go through her block list to see if she could, look at any numbers, see if they look familiar. She was not able to.
And so then you say that Mr. Brooks allegedly called while police were on scene. Who's saying that it's Mr. Brooks? Who's identifying that?
Miss Wynn. Miss Wynn is the one that received the phone call. And like I said, when we was wrapping up our investigation, getting ready to leave, she approached my patrol vehicle and said, he just called me saying that he's coming back to finish what he started. And when she said she said Mr. Brooks is coming back to finish what he started.
Did you actually hear that being said yourself?
No, I did not hear. It was a conversation, a phone call between Mr. Brooks and Miss Wynn. She approached my patrol vehicle telling me that he was on his way back. That's why officers stayed on the scene to see if we can make contact with him.
Did she provide you with that phone number?
I think she did provide me with that phone number.
And do you recall whether or not you all attempted to, whether or not you actually called that number?
Yes. I called the number as well as my sergeant called the number that was working at the time.
And what happened when you called that number?
There was we were not able to make contact with Mr. Brooks. No one answered.
And Ms. Nguyen claimed that the caller said that they would be back to finish whatever. And law enforcement waited, is that correct?
That's correct.
And no one ever showed up, correct?
That's correct.
No further questions at this time.
Okay, any redirect, Ms. Freeman?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, stay rest, but I would ask Officer Satcher to remain in case I need to recall.
Okay.
The only thing I would ask about that then would be that she would also be sequestered.
Okay. You have witnesses, I think it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Nguyen, Tyra Nguyen.
I'm gonna put her in the waiting room.
Thank you, Judge.
And I'm going to admit Ms. Nguyen.
Ms. Nguyen, could you turn your camera on, please?
All right.
And still. And then if you could, please raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. You can put your hand down. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Tyra Wynn, TYRAWIN.
Could you spell the first name again?
TYRA. And last name Wynn.
Okay. Are you saying TYRAWINN? Okay. And Ms. Nguyen, I guess let me ask, do you know why you're here this afternoon?
Yeah. Yes.
And are you familiar with Mr. Kashif Brooks?
Yeah.
Do you recall making a report about Mr. Brooks to the police in November of 2021?
Yeah.
And without, I guess, getting super deep into the allegations, you're aware that there's been a report that says that you told the police that he pointed a pistol at you, threatened to harm you, and took a child from you. Are you aware of those allegations?
Yeah.
Did that happen, Ms. Nguyen?
Not in that order.
When we say not in that order.
Not like that.
Okay. What do you mean?
Like, he didn't take a child out my hands at gunpoint. The child was already outside and the child wanted to go with him, so he took the child with him.
Okay. And so, just so I'm clear, you're saying that the child wanted to go with Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And as it relates to the allegation about him pointing a pistol at you, is that true? Did that happen, Ms. Nguyen?
Yes, it was like the girl it was multiple people outside. So I was in the garage and they was all outside. So when I was in the garage, she was like, he got his gun. So I ran back in the house. And he was like, he was making threats outside and I seen his hand go up. So I just ran in the house.
Okay, so you're saying that was happening. Somebody told you about that?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not saying you were actually seeing that happen?
No. Don't come in here. Get out. Get out.
And so if a police officer said that you told them that he pointed the gun at you, is that correct?
Yes.
It is correct, you're saying?
Mm-hmm. And he was making threats.
All right, no further questions.
Okay, Ms. Freeman, your witness.
Ms. Nguyen, the only thing I wanted to ask you, you said there were other people outside who heard the threats. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes? Just because we're recording.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Were these adults?
Two were adults and one was a child.
Okay. Okay. And when you say that your is it your son? Okay. You said that your son wanted to go with Mr. Brooks, but did you at that time tell Mr. Brooks that he couldn't take your son?
No, I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say anything to him.
So
we
you
were just at it at that time, and he came over there and actually, well, it was my best friend's house, and her and another person was also dealing with each other, so they was all coming over there, and he came with them, and my son went outside and wanted to go, so they let him go with him.
So do you remember telling Officer Satcher that Mr. Brooks took your son without your permission?
Yes, because it was what I didn't give him consent to do it.
Okay. And at the time, your son was 3?
Yes.
Okay. After this incident happened, Ms. Nguyen, when did Mr. Brooks eventually return your son to you?
Same day, actually, because I told him I didn't give you permission. They gave him back the same night.
Okay, but it was after the police had already left?
There was yeah, because the police had called and asked, was the baby there? They were trying to see. And they said, just return. And that's what they did.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Nguyen.
Okay, Attorney Rogers, do you have any redirect?
No, just argument, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay.
Would ask Ms. Nguyen, I think she can be excused, and if Your Honor is able to, Officer Satcher could be excused, because I know she just came on shift, and so I'm sure she has other things she needs to do.
Okay, so let me do this. Ms. Nguyen, you excuse, so you can log off and I'll put you in the waiting room until you're able to do that. And then I'm gonna let Officer Satcher back in so we can let her know that she can be released.
Officer Satcher, I'm not going to need to ask you any other questions, so I believe you're excused.
Yeah, correct. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
It's a win-win.
And Judge, I'll waive opening.
Okay, Attorney Rogers.
Yeah, I'm gonna be asking for a dismissal of all the charges at this point, based on the testimony that Ms. Nguyen just gave versus the testimony of the officer. I would say that there's no credibility on behalf of Ms. Nguyen. And what I mean is that, number one, she is pretty much the only basis for these allegations. Even just now, she just testified that there's witnesses to this alleged waving of a gun and that he wasn't waving it at her and that somebody had to tell her about it. And that's how she found out about these alleged threats that's happening somewhere else. But the officer didn't talk to any witnesses that said that's true or that that's what happened or anything like that. So long story short, Ms. Wynn is just not to be believed as it relates to anything. Additionally, other info that she gave officers, it never panned out and it wasn't investigated or independently corroborated by anyone. Specifically, the officer spoke about the conversation that Ms. Wynn allegedly had on the phone with some caller that the officer did not hear what was actually said. The only thing that was offered from the call as a prediction to base any credibility on did not happen. Specifically, she claims that somebody told her they're about to show up at the location to finish off X, Y, and Z. There's never any mention of anything like that happening. And again, officers have not offered any independent verification that that phone number is somehow connected to Mr. Brooks or that anyone answered. Or like I said, that it was on speakerphone or anything like that, that the officers heard it themselves. Additionally, as it relates to these threats, the statute for terroristic threats, 161137, explicitly states that no person should be convicted under the subsection on the uncorroborated testimony of the party to whom the threat is communicated. Simply put, the state needs more than just somebody saying this person said something to me, which is all they have at this point. They don't have any video to put Mr. Brooks on the scene. They don't have any witness to say that Mr. Brooks was on the scene. They don't have any witness to say anything about this gun being pulled or anything like that. And honestly, the version that's being given varied from what the officer testified as to what she was told. Especially when Ms. Wynn is saying that the threats and the gun waving and all this was seen by other people, but she never provides the names of these people to the officers. The officers don't get this corroborated by anyone else. So there's just basically no reason to believe Ms. Wynn. So for those reasons, I would ask that all of the charges be dismissed for lack of probable cause, specifically as it relates to the terroristic threats. I would also note the lack of corroboration for a more specific reason to dismiss that specific charge. Thank
you. Okay, Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. We're asking that all of the charges be bound over to Superior Court. I'll speak about the terroristic threats. I think that's the charge that Attorney Rogers focused his argument on. His witness, our victim, stated that there were witnesses who heard the threat. She stated that 2 of them were adults. I think that is sufficient for the corroboration at this stage, Your Honor. If and when the case goes to trial, if further investigation needs to be had to get the names of those individuals, certainly we will do that. But for this stage, based on what Ms. Wynn stated, that there were witnesses who heard the threat. Ms. Wynn, again, Mr. Rogers called her as a witness, and she is our victim in the case. She indicated that she did not consent to Mr. Brooks taking the son, and that's exactly what Officer Satcher indicated. She also stated that the defendant did point a gun at her. That's the same thing she told Officer Satcher. In fact, Ms. Wynn is the one who called 911, and she stated she's the one that called 911. So, Judge, based on the testimony from Officer Satcher, as well as our victim in the case, Ms. Wynn, we believe that evidence certainly supports probable cause, and we would ask that all charges are bound over to Superior Court.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Freeman. So in light of the evidence here, I do find that based upon the evidence presented in the court today, that there is sufficient probable cause to bind the case over to Superior Court of Clayton County. Specifically, in looking at the warrant, I do see that there was the witness testified, which I believe was the defense witness testified, Ms. Wynn, that allegedly the defendant did take the child without consent. She did state that. She also stated that that the defendant pointed a gun at her. She also stated there were threats made. Now in the warrant, it states here that apparently a witness told her, "I'm going to kill you, bitch." That was never either admitted or denied by the witness, Ms. Nguyen. However, I do find that it's sufficient probable cause to bind the case over to Superior Court with respect to all charges, but including the terroristic threat charge. That is the order of the court. And I want to thank you, Attorney Rogers, for your presentation of the case. And thank you, Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I believe Officer Satcher, I'm not sure if she realized that she could, you're excused, Officer Satcher.
Yes. I believe we stated so, correct?
Right, you did, Judge.
Okay, okay.
I think sometimes the officers still may not really hear it or understand, so thank you.
Okay. Okay, so yes, Mr. I'm sorry, sir, Mr. Brooks. So we've concluded your preliminary hearing for this morning. We are going to bind the case over for trial. Thank you. So we could have the, yes, deputies, yes, thank you. So deputies, we're ready for the next inmate that you have available. Who's that?
I have Mr. Rhodes here.
Okay, Mr. Rose, are you ready to proceed on that, Attorney Rogers?
Yeah, he's the one that I haven't been able to speak to yet. I need to be in a breakout room. with the
Okay.
judge.
Okay.
Right. And so, and Judge, I'll be sitting here and we're still live on YouTube as well.
Okay.
I'll wait for